Another important contribution to virtue ethics comes from the Stoics. There were Greek and Roman Stoics. The two most well-known Stoics were probably Epictetus, who was a slave under the reign of Nero, and then Marcus Aurelius, who was actually a Roman emperor. Quite a contrast. But their writings have been very influential, and there's a lot we can learn from them. Their hero in some ways was Socrates. Socrates was put to death 399 BC, and in his apology, his famous defense before his death, this was an account of his trial, one of the things he teaches is that no one can harm a good person. Now obviously people could be physically harmed, so he was talking about the soul, psyche in Greek, and Socrates was very concerned with the care of the soul. So when he says that it's not possible for a bad person to harm a good person, he means your soul. The only one that can truly harm you is yourself, according to Socrates. And we don't always learn a lot about what Socrates really thinks. In most of the dialogues, he's quite cryptic. But in the Apology, we get some more of his teachings than we get from other sources. And he says that the care of the soul is the most important thing. Care of virtue, he says. And of course, there are different virtues. There's generosity, truthfulness, courage, self-control. But Socrates was a particularly good example of self-control. He didn't care about money and other things that most people care about. His two most important followers were Plato and Aristotle. Now, these were two aristocrats. These were wealthy Athenians who were very educated. Aristotle tutored Alexander the Great up in Macedonia before he came down to Athens in 367 BC. Plato started probably the first university or college called the Academy. It lasted for about 1,000 years. By the time Aristotle's school had started, Socrates had already been killed. And Socrates always served as an example of someone who stood for good principles and cared a lot about virtue. So the central question of virtue ethics is, what kind of person am I? And Socrates lived a very Stoic version of virtue. Aristotle, as we'll see another time, distinguished between two types of happiness. Ordinary happiness that anyone can have if they live right, and what he called supreme happiness, which involves a little luck. The Greek word is touche. So, all of these Greek moral philosophers teach us different aspects of what today is known as virtue ethics, which has received a resurgence in the last 50 or more years. But a lot of it goes back to the example of Socrates, and we'll see more details about that in the coming days.